Welcome back. So now let's turn to the front pages, and of course our media analyst, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, joins us on the program. It's good to see you, Mr. Akintobi.
Always a
How are
pleasure
you
to be here.
doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah.
Good morning.
We
Thank
hope
you.
it was not too much of a rainy experience for you as you tried to get down here
It wasn't
today.
too bad, no.
All right, so let's start with the New Telegraph newspaper this morning, and of course it leads with Rivers. Rivers is not in a hurry to leave the front pages. It's hugging the headlines closely. And take a look at this. Rivers controversy over Ibas 5 billion naira verification savings claim, last minute appointments. And we see one insight there. Fubara to Rivers people, peace, greatest gift, hold it dearly. And of course, last week there was, a resounding part of the conversation that Ibas must be probed, how he spent Rivers' money, particularly, with the supplementary budget that we heard about during the defense. So what are your thoughts on this? One step back, 2 steps forward, Mr. Akintobi?
Well, the key point in what has happened in Rivers is the fact that everybody's advocating peace, all the way from the former governor Nyesom Wike when he was on Politics Today the other day. The thing he kept reiterating over and over again is that peace is the most important thing, that they have resolved their political issues. Peace has come back to Rivers. And I noticed that Governor Fubara himself, that was his mantra throughout. Even in the church service yesterday, he kept preaching peace. So I think the fact that everybody is united around this notion of peace, I think it is important and it is paramount, and it makes secondary all the ancillary issues from whether a state of emergency should even have been declared, because of course constitutionally the president has the power to do that, and he did deploy that power, but there are legal questions about was it appropriate. I think the verbiage of the Constitution says if there's a breakdown of law and order, a state of emergency can be declared. People are arguing that there was a political crisis, but it never escalated to the point of a state of emergency, and that the president was undemocratic in declaring that state of emergency. Having said that, the president did it. He used his powers. The state of emergency happened. The 6 months has expired. The question now becomes, the sole administrator, his 6 months tenure, is it subject to legislative review? I think that the courts and legal minds will address this issue in coming days, because there is no clear constitutional mandate as to the roles and responsibilities of a person so appointed. I think the president gives him his mandate, and because he's appointed by the president, I think he may be only answerable to the president. So I think what we should be demanding is telling the president to ask him to make account, to publicly declare his tenure, both the accounts, appointments, and all the things we are complaining about. I don't think, as he said himself, Ibas did, that the House of Assembly has the authority to ask him to come and declare his books and declare the accounts of his tenure, because the House of Assembly was not the one who appointed him. So I think the focus should be towards the presidency, and the pressure should be there, and say the Rivers people should be asking the president and saying, okay, for 6 months, our money was administered by somebody that you appointed, and we didn't have any democratic say-so whatsoever. Because remember, in a normal democratic setting, when an appropriation bill is passed, they generally have public hearings. The people, the electorate, have a say in how their money is spent. When you appoint a sole administrator, you basically suspend constitutional and democratic rights. So the sole administrator was acting independently under the auspices of the presidency. So that's the only person who has the authority to question him or probe him. But the Rivers people are a bit disgruntled and want to know, have a full accounting of that 6-month period. So I think they should focus their attention in a different direction in terms of where they apply the pressure. But I do think there's nothing untoward about asking him to declare, give a report on his tenure of 6 months. That report should cover the accounting, his appointments, the projects that were signed, contracts that were given. It should give us an entire overview of his 6-month tenure.
Well, I totally agree with you, especially when people get to look at the last-minute appointments that he made as sole administrator for just 6 months. Let's take a look at this Nigeria, another newspaper this morning. It leads with something absolutely different from politics. It says, failed transactions, banks, customers decry delay in money reversal. Once complaints resolved within 2 days, as pressure on customer service desks blamed for ugly situation. This is a tale for many Nigerians. Failed transactions plus deductions, I should add. I'm not sure you have escaped this, Mr. Ketobi.
I don't think any Nigerian has escaped it. We all have tales of woe when it comes to electronic transactions, in terms of reversals, in terms of wrong debits, in terms of you put your card in the ATM, it does ch-ch-ch-ch-ch, like it's counting the money and the money doesn't come out, but you're debited. And the banks are slow. They're very quick to take your money, but they're slow to give it back. Absolutely. And I think that's just the way of banking around the world. But I think there should be penalties. This is the thing. The thing is, does the regulator hold banks to account if they're slow to return your money? There are rules, for example, like in the airlines. If an airline delays your flight for more than 2 hours, there's recourse for you. You can ask for compensation. So I'm wondering, I've read, I think vaguely I recall in the back of my head that there are some rules on the ground that already exist that penalize the banks if within a certain reasonable window. And by reasonable, 2 days. 2 days is even too long, because there are situations where that is your last money and all of a sudden it's hanging. You have no other backup. You have no fallback position. You've gone to do this thing. Your money is stuck. You can't get it back. You have nowhere to turn. And they're dawdling about giving it back. I think there should be penalties. And I think, see, we have laws on the books for every kind of misbehavior. Corporate, individual, any kind of malfeasance. We have rules on the books in Nigeria. It's not about the absence of laws. It's about the enforcement. What's the willpower? What's the political will? What is the economic will to begin to hold authorities to power? The banks are very powerful, and they have a lot of political clout. I'm sure they back many of the political aspirants, and many of them, even if they don't openly declare political affiliation, bottom line is they are corporate behemoths that carry so much authority that even the House of Assembly may be a little bit gun-shy at trying to hold them to account and say the average Nigerian cannot afford to suffer the way you're making them suffer. Sometimes reversals take a month. You have to visit banks repeatedly. Why should I have to leave my work, pay transport to go to my branch, sit in a queue for God knows how long, simply to ask you to give me my money back? I shouldn't even have to. It should be automatic reversal, and it should be as instant as possible. So I think there should be harsh penalties. Part of our problem in Nigeria is that we get away with murder. There's no accountability. There is no punishment for bad behavior. Corporations should not only be held to account, but should be made to pay, and pay stringently. I would like to see something like 100,000 naira fine per day that you don't return my 50 naira. If it's just my 50 naira you're holding and you don't return it for so many hours, you should pay 100,000 per day, per week, per hour, per minute that you're holding my money. Trust me, they'll sit up if they have that kind of hammer hanging over their head.
Just to perhaps squeeze in maybe 2 more questions as regards this, because some argue that the banking sector is where you see one of the biggest frauds in this part of the world. So I wonder if you think sometimes this could be a deliberate attempt by these banks to outsmart Nigerians. I mean, you know, for a long time, Nigerians didn't even know some of these deductions. Just 2 naira, you feel like, you know what, I don't care about 2 naira, 1 naira, 5 naira.
2 naira in 20 million places is a lot of money.
A lot of money, you know, in very recent times always. So I wonder if you think this could be a deliberate attempt. And then the banks would also argue that, you know what, we're hit heavily by the Japa syndrome a few years down the line. Some of our experts had to leave the country, and that's why we experienced this kind of a drawback in terms of how our facilities have functioned in very recent times.
That's no excuse, really. In terms of whether they're deliberately doing this, whether there's fraud involved, I'll tell you that there's no bank fraud that occurs that the insiders are not complicit. It's not possible to carry out a heist or a fraud fraud in a bank without some insider collaborating with the people who are doing it. So I don't think there's an individual direct move to hold your money for so many extra days, maybe because somebody will benefit the interest. I think it's a systemic problem. I think it's a systemic corporate problem that has to do with their infrastructure, that has to do with their backbone, which leads to your second question, is that how depleted were they by this Jackpot syndrome in terms of their talent, their technology talent fleeing overseas? How did that affect their operations? That's none of our business. If they felt like they were less than capable in the technology department, then they should have shut down and given us our money back, or told us, sorry, we can't cope, take your money elsewhere. It's not an excuse to say that we lost some of our best brains and as a result our infrastructure is struggling. You owe a duty of care to my money. When I gave it to you, you didn't give any conditions. When I gave it to you for safekeeping, I gave it to you because I felt that no matter what happens, not only is my money safe, it's also available to me anytime I need it. For you to now start giving me excuses that, well, unfortunately, some unforeseen circumstances that I didn't foresee when I collected your money have now inhibited my ability to perform as I promised I would. That's a breach of fiduciary responsibility, and I don't have to tolerate that. So I don't think that's an excuse at all.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it appears as if the fintechs are now giving, the traditional banks a run for their money, with the new level of competence that they bring to the banking system with instant transactions and all of that. But there's a whole gamut of issues as far as, banking is concerned. We might also ask why there's no money in the ATMs and why we now have to resort to a second exchange rate with the POS machines.
People, yes.
That's the new experience.
Yeah,
and, you wonder if you find that in other countries of the world. There are so many other issues to explore. But let's go to the Leadership newspaper, which also, trills with an issue that affects every one of us. Petroleum supply. Dangote refinery is Nigeria's future. This is from the front page of Leadership newspaper. Dangote refinery is Nigeria's future, Otedola tells Dapman. Of course, it's an expression of support for his, businessman, friend, and colleague. But this also speaks to the continuing, feud between Dangote refinery and some marketers over petroleum supply and distribution, as it impacts on jobs of particular associations in the petrol supply value chain. Mr. Akitobi, I'd like you to weigh in on the consequences of this petrol supply.
What is best for Nigerians, for the mass of Nigerians? What is the best outcome? I believe that when Dangote refinery came online, it was a good thing for Nigeria. When it was being built, when it was being proposed, when it was being financed, we all agreed that it was going to be a good thing for Nigeria. And I think now that it is on stream and it is up and running and it is supplying, I think we can see stability in the fuel availability. We see some stability in pricing. We don't see shortages. We don't see queues as much as they used to exist. So I think Dangote refinery, if the political chess pieces are put in place properly, I think it should be a win-win for all parties. I think there's still a bit of squabbling here and there because there's apprehension about the livelihood of certain sectors. Look at what he has done now. He has imported so many thousand trucks to do direct distribution at no cost. That right there, that at no cost, should excite every Nigerian because...
But that's a threat to the truck drivers.
It is a threat to the truck drivers, but how many are the truck drivers versus 200 million? What number do they represent among all of us that they should hold us to ransom? I think there's got to be some middle ground where they can both have some benefit in such a way that the masses will be the eventual winner. And this, I was on the Lekki Expressway the other day and I saw those trucks and they lined up for miles. And I could just see the potential that if the stumbling blocks were removed and these trucks were able to load up from the refinery and fan out all across Nigeria and deliver fuel, transport cost free to every fuel station. At the end of the day, the Nigerian consumer has to be the winner. So I think we should all gang up and try and find solutions to the people who are dislocated by this advancement. no condition is permanent in life. There will always be dislocation. In any advancement, any development, any innovation, the old way of doing things will cause disruption. Disruption is an everyday part of life. That's why they say you have to unlearn what you know and learn anew. So if that man and any of the other truck drivers, I heard yesterday that the depots were empty. The depots where they normally store the fuel, where the trucks go and collect, they were empty. No activity because Dangote is doing direct supply. So the old depot people, the old truckers, they should begin to rethink and reinvent themselves. You mentioned a short while ago that the fintechs have stepped in to meet the gaps being left by the traditional banks. That's innovation. That's adjusting to new realities. So every sector will always be disrupted. That is the nature of advancement. But if that disruption affects you, look at AI, it's taking away everybody's jobs. Does that mean we sit at home and mope about it and cry? No, we unlearn what we knew, we relearn, and we start doing different things in different ways. So I think that we all need to rally around this Dangote of a man. I think what he has done is beneficial for Nigeria if we allow him. So
if it is beneficial to all Nigerians, that means, you know, an elimination of an aspect of the cost that would have impacted on price.
Absolutely.
So should we now be demanding a further reduction in the pump price of petrol? In the days of the PPPRA, we would, you know, have officials of that department going to filling stations, you know, to ensure compliance. But we do not have that kind of regulation in a deregulated market. So how do we then, you know, reintroduce that to demand a reduction in the pump price of petrol so that Nigerians are not extorted?
We demanded deregulation. The PIA gave it to us, right? And deregulation simply means that market forces dictate prices. That's why we should encourage competition. That's why you hear cries about, oh, he's a monopolist. Let's watch against monopolistic tendencies, because if he corners the market, he can dictate the price at will. But the notion of capitalism, free markets, is that the market dictates the price through competition. So if all of a sudden Dangote has a stranglehold on the entire petroleum value chain, all the way from crude all the way to the finished product, then he can run roughshod over all of our pockets. But I think Nigeria is a bit too complex and too sophisticated for that kind of a thing to happen in an economy of 200 million people who are aware, whose very livelihoods depend on the price of fuel. Fuel has a direct impact on every aspect of our daily lives. So I don't think that anybody could just suddenly hike the price of fuel ×2 or ×3 as a private individual and expect to get away with it without grinding the country to a halt. So yes, you have the Nupengs of this world, NLCs, who kind of try to hold checks and balances against runaway marauders masking themselves as entrepreneurs. So I think there are checks and balances in place enough that will inhibit Dangote from being able to run away with pricing in any way. But what you asked me, Bukola, is how do we bring that pricing benefit to the pump, where it will benefit the man on the streets every day? Well, I think that Dangote himself, I think apart from being an astute businessman, I think he also to some extent has some altruistic motives. So I think once he sees his costs dropping, say, for example, this notion of delivering the fuel direct, that's an added cost to him. For now, he's not saying he's passing on that cost to us at the pump. So we've already benefited, because that which we used to pay, or which was added to it.
But it may be cheaper for him for his own operation.
Yeah, absolutely, it may be at the end of the day. But what we should all look at is the fact that prices at the pump are still holding steady today, despite what has happened. And we should continue to just watch that bottom line and be scrupulous. Oversight and regulation keeps excesses in check.
Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper this morning. It leads with something different. It leads with politics. It says 2027 political divisions deepen over Tinubu's reforms. Mr. Kisobe, I wonder if you think that sometimes the Tinubu administration is making it perhaps a bit easier for the opposition ahead of 2027.
Well, for you to see this degree of political activity, this degree of ferment, this early in the stage, because we're only halfway through the first tenure, and there's already so much dust being thrown up about 2027. Usually political activity doesn't start until the third year, even if in the second year it's still a bit tepid. But for it to be this virulent, this early, it means that people sense a vulnerability, political players sense a vulnerability that, okay, so perhaps the administration, its reforms might be in the right direction, but the effects are not being felt quickly enough to where there's genuine disgruntlement and a bit of concern in the populace, to where political players want to take advantage of that because they feel they can spin it that this government does not have your best interest at heart, and everything they've done has unleashed suffering on you. From the very first day, May 29, 2023, all they've done is unleash suffering on you. And they keep doing it every day. New taxes, new taxes, new taxes. So those who would want to compete, see, in politics, it's about kicking the man when he's down. You seize the moment, carpe diem. You take advantage of the weakness of your opponent. Politics is not a gentleman's game. You're not there to play niceties. Mr. How are you this morning? And no, politics is brutal. So if you sense a vulnerability on your opponent's part, that's the time you go hardest on him. So I think that those who would put themselves forward in 2027 sense a public perception problem with the current administration. Whether that,
the headline is looking at the divisions, perhaps within the APC leadership.
Yes,
it looks like there's that division. Some are for and some are against some of these reforms. But people have referred to the president as a strategist when it has to do with politics.
Absolutely.
Do you think he's going to tone down a bit on these reforms ahead of the elections?
I think he's committed himself to a particular path, and I don't think anything will make him deviate from that. I think this very aspect of political strategist that you've just mentioned is how he will resolve the issues. All the aspects of what the impact is on his policies, that will all play second fiddle to the backroom dealing, the exchange, the patronage, the you scratch my back, which he's a master at. So all the people who are joining, even within the APC now, he has what it takes to shut them up. And he will do that. I guarantee it. The president is a master of the game when it comes to that. So I'm not even concerned at all about those in the APC who seem to think that the reforms are not going in the right direction. The president is focused enough and bullheaded enough to push through his agenda, and he will make everybody fall in line, and they will fall in line. It's politics when you posture. Those who are posturing like they're against it now, they're out for something, and they will get it eventually.
And speaking of posturing, you know, the opposition is also posturing in one way or the other.
Yes.
You know, but are Nigerians seeing altruism, you know, a genuineness in their posturing? And that, I guess that's what will inform their decisions ahead of 2027.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dayo Akitobi. It's always a delight.
Always a pleasure to be here.
With your analysis on the program. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
And speaking of delight, there's more to come. Maybe not in the way that you would expect it, but with the hope that there'll be solutions in our next conversation. We'll be focusing on security as it has to do with Nigeria's north, and indeed as it affects the entire part of the country. So stay with us for this one coming up next on the program. We'll be right back.